Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome. We are so glad that you're here. I am loving that people are enjoying that little relax tonight word search. Did think it was funny that someone said they saw paint, so I think that was speaking to you because the lyrics of the song were talking about pain, but it was paint. All of those wonderful little things. But welcome. If you have not seen me before, my name is Katie Gideon, and it has been a moment since I've been on this side of the Sonder socials, but I am thrilled to be back in it and certainly be doing that. But I want to give a huge shout out to my co-host, Jeno, who you will see in the chat. We are the former and forever Team Texas. When we first started this, that's where we both lived, so that's what we referred to. I have since lived a couple different places, and I'm back up in Oklahoma right now. But we are always great to have this wonderful time together with each and every one of you, especially on a lovely Sunday. No Sunday scaries here. But I'm already seeing a lot of our returning socialers. Welcome. It is so glad to see each and every one of you every time. We love that this has become a routine as well as a ritual, not only just to work on your journal setup. We're working on the final week of August, final full week of August, I should say, as well as connecting with our Silk and Sonder community in the chat. And so if you are new, welcome. We're also glad that you're here for that. And what we love about the socials is you can participate in as much or as little as you want. Just double check that the chat is set to everyone. That's for the larger Sonder social team here. And then it defaults to hosts and panelists. And so you're welcome to hit myself and Jen up in that chat. But we assume that you want other people's perspectives and ideas. So you can certainly do that there. And then we know that with some of the Zoom updates, you do have the option to reply directly to the messages, but we have no control over the consistency of that. We feel like it decides whether it's going to come or go. Um, so don't worry about that. And Jen already said if you have to leave early or if you miss a section or if you want another facilitator's perspective, because I know Jen's hosting one tomorrow, you can always catch the replay on the YouTube link. And so we have our community guidelines, as always, be kind and courteous to yourself and others, and no promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions. We will most likely redirect customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com. And then also keep an eye out because we are going to have a new kind of updated survey for these socials because we as facilitators are always looking for certain feedback and those type of things. So definitely make sure to check that out, especially if you want to voice your opinion with just those kind of feedback there. And then as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for all your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So I love seeing that people have had a great day, a wonderful week, a wonderful month, all of those amazing things. But then also the acknowledgement of maybe they haven't, you haven't been as consistent with your journal. Maybe you've had a rough day, you've had a rough week, a rough couple of weeks, maybe it's been a rough summer. We are just happy that you've come exactly as you are. And we want you to, again, participate in as much or as little as you want in this, because it'll be certainly a little all over the place, because I have definitely had a little bit more of kind of an emotional roller coaster this week. But we'll get into that as we do some of the reflections. But we are glad to spend this next hour with each and every one of you. So, we are talking about velocity. And I came across the visual kind of meme on the left with the year legit went like January, February, March, and then April, May, June, July, and then August. Because I feel like that was the vibe. I feel like those January, February was definitely a little slow for me, and then everything else is bunched together, but it's drawn out a little bit. And so then I liked this idea of almost like relative velocity because all motion is relative. Maybe it's you who've moved away by standing still. And so I love this kind of perspective of sometimes it feels like everything is going on and on around you, but it's also that simple explanation of if you are following two cars driving down, everyone's driving the same speed. The one in the front is going to look like it's going faster than the one in the middle just because of that relative velocity concept. So you'll hear me use the term of like zooming in and zooming out. So I think that's something as a gentle reminder when it comes to velocity is maybe you need to kind of be that observer watching things kind of go by and jump in, whereas sometimes the whole kind of idea and concept of am I falling behind, am I staying still, am I not doing what I'm supposed to, sometimes that's not as prevalent as you think it is when you're from a, another vantage point. um, so I went down this whole relative velocity physics point, but I still feel like it's that kind of whole concept of relativity. And then if Deep Blue Sea's been on recently, which is an amazingly cheesy shark movie, and LL Cool J does a really fun explanation of the concept of like time relativity. And it's wonderful. I think Deep Blue Sea underrated for all of its like iconic monologues. So I think that's one of those things just to consider is sometimes if you're feeling a little overwhelmed with the direction or the speed that you're going, or maybe the lack of direction and speed you're going, is maybe you need to kind of be that vantage point to see what is going on, because sometimes it is a relative velocity concept. So that was kind of what I liked, and I feel like it can be relatable where it's like all of a sudden you got milestone to milestone to milestone, and then it's like crickets. So I appreciate that. And sometimes that is the gentle reminder that maybe we need to tackle some of those things with a little bit more confidence on the mental and emotional side of these things. So those were kind of my takes on velocity or relative velocity in this. So we're going to cover that velocity mind map, which is going to be week number 4. And then we're going to do a rosebud thorn exercise and then move into those weekly setup pages. And so I'll cover all of those, throwing in all the little things here and there. But as we say, you can participate in as much or as little as you want. If I need to go back to examples, back to slides, let me know. Same thing with, you can continue to have the conversations in the chat, even as we move to the next prompts. Because again, this is your time for you and your self-care journey. So we've got our final velocity mind map question. And I think these are always, again, great. We love the mind maps. I found this month's mind map just overall tricky. And we'll talk about why with just the kind of question we went in. So I kind of revamped how I do my mind map. Normally I do a blank page with all the fun stickers and all those things, but I've actually repurposed my shopping list section on this page just because it wasn't feeling me. Um, yes, the mind maps are every month. They go hand in hand with the theme of the month. The facilitators write them, and it is an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into the theme through a couple different lenses, a couple different perspectives, and even a couple different focal points. And what I have found is that I feel like sometimes they're very much like on the nose appropriate. And then there are other times where I find them a little trickier. So I tend to pivot a little bit more into, can I reframe this question of what is going on this week? Because I'm definitely one of those, I always want to find an answer. And if I can't, sometimes the answer is something that you can do a little bit later. So you can put it away, put it on a shelf, grab it for another time. But even as Jen pointed out, you're not behind. You don't have to catch up with these. These are just a way to kind of dive a little bit deeper, brush off maybe some of the cobwebs if you haven't been to a social in a minute, just to get started as we kind of start to move through those journal setup pages. And so for the first week, we talked about the true north, that idea of the compass and velocity there. And then we did the accelerator. So, something that is always going to help elevate and shift your mood. Then we talked about the speed bump, the ever present speed bump. And that could be, speed bump, slow down, detour, all of the above. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about a current anchor, because velocity isn't just about accelerating, as like kind of my relative velocity example. You're not always going. Sometimes you got to stop and see what's going on around you. But it's also about knowing how to hold your ground beautifully right where you are. So write down the single most grounding habit or routine that has successfully kept you steady amidst the speed of this past month. What is the one thing supporting you that deserves to be celebrated and sustained? So a lot of times, not only do we identify some of these things, but it's also an opportunity to kind of step back and celebrate and even acknowledge some of the hard work that you've done. And so here are the questions there. Like I said, normally I've got a much bigger spread, but in this one is. And so I talked about I don't have a routine at the moment. And that is because I am in between job contracts. I'm still living with my parents. It's been here for a couple months now. And so I'm starting to get a little antsy, but I'm in that just kind of weird limbo where it's like I don't really want to set a new routine because I'm just going to have to set a new one again because I don't have my own space. I don't currently have, the 9 to 5 job and that idea. So I'm just struggling with what is my routine at the moment. So I kind of came back to these because normally a great anchoring point for me is actually my family, but now I'm very much involved in the family, so they're not quite the same anchor point at the moment. So I tried to look in with that, and really I've been able to help with the like check-ins with friends, and that's friends here, friends other places. They have been a great kind of anchoring point. And then I saw someone already put this on their socials. Honestly, these have been so much. They're always great, but these have been really valuable because it almost gives me that like deliverable timeline that I'm kind of used to when it comes to like projects and things. Then I kind of took a step back and I was like, okay, these are kind of what I would consider okay answers, but I don't think it's really what's like grounding me in the moment. And then I realized, again, in all of its somewhat cliche, the routine that I do every single morning, regardless of if I'm getting up at 5 a.m. or 10 a.m., it's making my bed. And it is something that I do as like this kick starts my day. And I've always been wanting to make my bed. And I know there's a Navy officer that talks about making their bed, and it's a good concept in those things. And so it's more of like, I think I have absolutely like, that is the steady amongst everything is that even now I will make my bed. And so that's become that relying of like, that is how I start my day. Again, not sure what time that's going to be, but that is me officially starting my day and moving on. Same thing with, ending my day by unmaking it and getting in it. So it's still celebrating that small, simple thing of making your bed every day. So I would love to continue. Thank you. Well, I think that's who it is. Yeah. Jen put in there William McRaven. It's something like that. I'll maybe do a quick Google search when I come off. But if you again are joining us, we're working on that week 4 mind map. Please feel free to share in the chat that kind of um, the grounding habit or routine that's kept you steady. And then, or you can look at it from that one thing that is supporting you through this and deserves to be celebrated. And maybe this is a routine that you've already established. It doesn't have to be something new, so you can lean a little bit into the celebration. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to go back to those slides and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I loved seeing a lot of the routines and how a lot of people certainly have said that that now kind of defines the type of day that you had. And I absolutely agree with that because even if my day goes completely off the rails, that simple act of having my bed already made, it's like, well, I did one thing today. And I also think it's just that kind of comfortable coming back and it's like, well, at least I don't have to deal with that, especially when I think of like going into my bedroom and it's like it's chaos, honestly, chaos everywhere, but that is like not the chaos. And I feel like that's a great anchor and grounding point. But love seeing a lot of you all with the socials and even just some of those kind of smaller rituals where it is kind of that active art, be it a prayer, a gospel, a daily ritual in the app, an affirmation, or even something as simple. I saw Alexandra said that she gets up every night to let her boyfriend in. And that is just like kind of that nice calming thing that it's like it's less of a routine. It's just something that has comfortably happened that has been reliable. So love seeing a lot of these because at the same time, like I will be the first to admit my routines are not great, but there's almost still that act of and it's making the bed or it's letting my dog out or it's opening the windows. I feel like it becomes more of that type of perspective. So it's like, well, I at least did that today. But please continue to work on these even as we go. If you couldn't quite come up with something, maybe it is something that you can look a little bit later in the week. And that's what these mind maps are great, is that you can come back to these throughout the week. You have the whole week to do it, or you don't have to do them at all. Because maybe it's something that you can celebrate on the one good thing on those weekly spreads as kind of maybe what was one thing that anchored you today. And you can come back and see if it's the same thing or maybe something different each time. You can always rove the oceans a little bit, anchoring at different places. So now we are going to move to that rosebud thorn exercise. This is going to be on page 50. And this is still kind of moving into that reflection on again those highs and lows and everything in between that you had this week, because we love the opportunity to acknowledge that rose, something that made you happy, that made you smile, that went well, something that is a bud, which is that emerging opportunity, or something that you want to sow into an emerging opportunity, or even just the kind of shout out of. And I always appreciate the opportunity to see those highs and lows together and being able to almost take that intentional decision. I'm a big, what is in my realm of control, deciding how they're going to impact my next week, if at all. So I love that idea of giving it its like kind of moment in the spotlight on the ability to decide if we're going to leave it or if we get to take it with us. So my rose this week, my iPad wasn't working and it was driving me nuts and I couldn't figure it out. I wouldn't say I'm the most tech savvy, but it takes a lot to not be able for me to figure out and troubleshoot it. So I scheduled a little appointment at the Apple store and they fixed my problem. And I almost was I was walking in there convinced I was going to have to get a new one, because it was doing some of those like kind of sketchy, maybe conspiracy theory things. But it was wonderful. It was amazing. It was worth the trip down there. And they were so helpful, and I did not have to get a new iPad, so that's worth celebrating. Emerging opportunity, but it's been crazy hot here in Oklahoma, triple digits heat index, and we believe I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's only going to be in the like mid 90s this week. So I'm excited for a little bit of the reprieve there. Because it's one of those we walked out today and I was like, do I dare say it feels cooler? So exciting for that. And then the thorn, I was talking to Jen about it beforehand because I was an officer in the Navy for 10 years. I was a surface warfare officer, so I did that work. And I feel like I keep it kind of at arm's length, but it's more like I'm still in tune. I still tap into things. And really, it just demanded my full attention this go round. There's an anniversary of a not so great thing that occurred when I was still active duty. I had friends, just got back from a really tough deployment, and then another friend that served with that unfortunately is no longer with us. And so it just rears its ugly head every once in a while. And I always have a hard time dealing with it, handling it, understanding it. So that is kind of where my head's been a little bit, a lot. And it's one of those, like I said, it comes in these kind of very much random waves, and I'm never quite prepared for it. And it always makes you kind of wonder. I am lucky that I still have great friends that I'm in kind of constant talk with. But, as soon as we're texting back and forth and then it turns into a phone call, you're like, whew, we got stuff to talk about. So it's just been that. And it's certainly been some unfortunately high visibility things, and that I feel like is always uncomfortable. Um, at least for a lot of folks to process, for sure with me. But love seeing all of our other prior military folks. Welcome. Thank you all. But as always, if you want to share with your rosebud thorns, we love to celebrate all of the roses with each and every one of you. Get excited for those things to come, as well as just send some extra love, thought, strength, and support and prayers for some of those thorns that we're navigating this week. So I'm going to play a song. This song I feel like is appropriate, but to me it also sounds like two or three different songs. So if you can think of it, we would always appreciate that. And so we'll see you soon. This is page 50, Rosebud Thorn, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And that is what I also always appreciate the rosebud thorn exercise, especially in the socials, is because just that ability to kind of share some of those things, it can be like, ooh, I can relate to that. And that I think just makes everybody feel a little less alone, it makes it a little bit more handle, a little bit more manageable. Um, so I always appreciate seeing these little snapshots into everyone's lives. And so appreciate that. So thank you. So glad saw a lot of those roses. And I loved that kind of just little magical moment when a rose and a bud can be the same thing, or a rosebud thorn can all be the same thing. I feel like those are almost like those little unicorn moments that happen ever so often. And I know even when you rope in a thorn, it's always like, oh, but it's so fun when they're the same. So thank you, everybody. Please continue to share even as we move to those weekly setup pages. Because like I said, I feel like I saw someone just talked about their thorn being like feels. It's like, oh, I get it. It's been all the weird feels. The like sitting and scrolling and then start crying at whatever random Instagram thing pops up. Those have been the feels. So now we're going to move into those weekly planning pages. And I kind of did this separately, but I had no idea that that bats seemed to be the theme of this page until I like scrolled through all the way to see. But I guess yeah, bats are the theme. So end of August means we're gonna release the bats as we get ready for those burr moments. Um, so what I appreciate about the weekly setup pages is it is your opportunity to decide what you need for that week. And I'm already seeing that some people, they are sending their children off to college. So that new routine is going to be different, especially if you're an empty nester. I know some of our teachers have already gotten back to school, so it is a new normal. So that is what I appreciate the weekly pages, because you can design them for what you need. Because sometimes what you need is exactly as written, sometimes what you need is something different, and sometimes what you need is to take a break from some of these things. Um, and I think that is what's nice about being able to start over with each and every one of these. Sometimes it is just a simple copy and a paste, and we love those. Sometimes it is something, again, completely different, but there is no right or wrong way to set up your pages. And as someone, again, breaking up with perfection is always required, because Sunday me definitely has different vibes than like Wednesday me. And Wednesday me is always asking really like, what were you thinking? It's like, well, I was in this bubble, I was in this vibe, I was listening to this music, and it's like, well, we need to completely redo this or we're not going to make it to Friday. So I feel like I've had that happen more often than not. So we're going to start at the top of that page, and it's going to be this week I want to feel. And again, I love the intentional optimism of being able to kind of manifest the type of week that you want. I always ask myself, how do I want to feel this time next week? Because I like to have a goal. I'm very goal oriented. Don't know what gave that away. And so it's an opportunity for me to have that kind of anchor point, that idea of coming back. As I'm experiencing the rose, the buds, and the thorns of the week. So that is why I always like to do that. And so sometimes it's a specific word: 1% better, 5% happier, 15% more hydrated. Maybe it's that juxtaposition of a less and a more. I love duality. I love that push and pull. And same thing with maybe you need a different word each week. Maybe it's stickers, maybe it's a doodle. I saw that someone was going to have to laugh, doodle, and journal, I think, tonight when we go back to that word search. So maybe this is where you put it. Or I always feel like sometimes it can be a lot of pressure to come up with like, how am I going to define my week with this? And I feel like even I put my own pressure on that, with because that's been like, well, what's going to be my answer? And Bailey, one of our other facilitators, definitely gives a great example of like, maybe this is just going to be the summary of what I think my week is going to look like after I've set it up. Or maybe this is something that you come back and almost treat as a reflection opportunity as the week goes on. So I'm going to play a quick song. If you want to share how you want to feel, or this week you want to feel, or what's going to be the vibes you're reaching for, we would love to see that. We'll see you soon. Okay, so now maybe if you again choose your own adventure, so maybe you chose path A, which was how I'm going to define my week using this. Maybe you chose path B with the, well, I'm going to wait on this and do my summary. We're going to throw in another component with that, with the weekly major three goals. And I thought this quote was quite quite appropriate for my current situation and living with my parents, and that, you had this great idea, but you didn't tell anybody. And then you get all upset because you didn't tell anybody. And I feel like I can always tell when I'm running a little low energy because I have those conversations in my head and it's like I know I told you this. It's like no we didn't. And so I would sometimes have to be like, did I actually tell you this? Are we doing that? And even when the folks that worked with me, they would be like, feel like sometimes I would have said it and then they just default to like, no, you didn't tell us. It's like your dreams. So with those weekly major three goals, we love this idea of being able to categorize these things. And that's again just kind of zooming in the focus. So a mind, a body, a soul goal. Maybe it is a work and a personal goal. I think there was another like a personal, a family, a something. So I always like that. Sure. And then sometimes it is interwoven with like the theme, how you want to feel this week, and being able to put those together. Or sometimes the goals tend to be the anchor points. And for me, these tend to be the mental and emotional reminders for me to get through the week. So they tend to be a little bit more generic, a little bit more, like I said, leaning into the feels. So this week for sure was going to be one of those like, kind of sit with the feelings because I normally don't have time to kind of sit and process a lot of the feelings. And so I think that's really what I was going to lean into for sure this week, especially with how I was feeling about last week and the complicated things that are there. But maybe you want to focus on one specific goal. Maybe it's just the alliteration because you want to trick your brain into thinking it's way cooler than it isn't. And so the frog, fun, the fierce, the four C's. And then we do know quite a few folks that will link the two sections, the major three goals and the to-dos together, because that's kind of how my brain works. So I do those kind of in tandem. And same thing with, again, maybe it's one or two. Maybe this is where some of those affirmations, the motivation, kind of those ideas of how you're going to support how you want to feel, how you're going to embrace some of those rosebud thorn feelings into that type of thing, or even turn that into a type of routine. And same thing with maybe you need to switch the two sections because, again, the brain works um, better in certain just formulas and fonts. The weekly to-dos. So these can be those traditional to-dos, the to-do list. I luckily don't have anything massively on the top of my to-do list. My big priority this week for my to-do list is I need to finish my paper for one of my MBA classes. So that's going to take the big priority. I've also scheduled a couple other things to again break up that routine. But that's like again the big to do. Not a lot of other to dos. Normally I am a to-do person, but I just don't have the length of the to-dos that I have. So when we talk about this week is going to be different than some of the other weeks. This is definitely just one of those. I don't have things to do. I have one thing that has to get done. But normally I'm a big fan of the Eisenhower matrix as well, when you just need that little extra micromanagement for your days. And that's the do, decide, delegate, or delete. But I don't delete anything because I am usually alone and unafraid in the world. So it just gets delayed. Um, and kind of that responsibility behind it. But maybe the Pomodoro technique is also your thing, where again, you put a timer on, do a task, take a break. It works wonders, especially if you have to tackle a pretty lengthy task. But it also could just be something fun. Maybe these are weekly to-dos, these are hobbies. Maybe it's the to don'ts. Maybe it's a need versus want, because I always think it's wonders, especially if you carry over your same to dos, which isn't a bad thing. I'm a copy and paste girly as well as a procrastinator. Sometimes if you just reorder them, stick them in the shuffle and try to bring it out, it kind of changes your perspective with how you want to tackle them. And you can always add a fun visual or some concept there. Or even this is maybe more the section for the gentle reminders. So that's the to be. Maybe it's more of embracing those things. Kind of a great idea to go along with it. So I am going to stop talking, but I would love to hear how you approach your goals. Do you have the three major goals? Are they minor goals? Again, are they the things you want to accomplish hand in hand with those to-dos? Or again, are these more of those gentle reminders, mental and emotional, to get you through the week? Or are you in that kind of copy and paste mode just because of like the fact that it's the end of August. But love to have that conversation in the chat, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And I always treat that previous section of like the fundamental productivity. This is how I'm going to get stuff done. And now, this particular section are all the other things that you want to do with it. And I've almost pivoted from the idea of having a habit and activity that I have to do. I use my monthly habit tracker for that. Of those are the things that I have to do every single day. I have now turned in this habit activity tracker of the things that I now want to do. What are the things that are going to anchor my day? What are the things that are going to re-energize me? What are the things that are going to be those kind of linchpin, important cogs in the routine that I have? And for me, again, creature of habit, it's the same three things. I want to move every day, I want to read every day, and I want to journal every day. Then I add this lens of reality, which is what is going to be realistically accomplished. How much time can I devote to each of these things? What am I going to have to kind of adjust or pivot because of those things? But those are the three things that I do every single day. So my habit activity tracker is boring. It's those three things. And I'll usually throw in a fourth. Um, and a lot of it has been like a bucket list or an adventure list, which I'll show those of just like making your day to day or some of the ordinary things a little bit more magical, almost to the point of you could say you're romanticizing your daily life. I like the saying of finding magic in the ordinary days. And so that's where I've kind of pivoted just this mindset of even going to the grocery store is going to be a little bit different. My sister actually wanted a lamp. And so I had time and my mother and I were bored. So we decided to go see a couple of these like vintage antique stores. And we sent my sister a couple, which I was thrilled. It's one of those, I'm so picky about lamps, and the fact that I could have probably walked out of any of those places with one of those lamps, I was thrilled. So it's more of like the magic of, yes, we wanted to find a lamp or help my sister find a lamp. And then we could have gone to all these other places, but it was just still that like magical little adventure. And what was fun is there was a poster hanging somewhere in one of the ones that we went to, and it's the skiing family from Aspen. And they're all decked out in their ski gear. It's like quintessential, maybe late 70s, early 80s, with like mustaches, the hair. And it turns out it was actually my neighbor who lived across the street for 30 years. He passed away recently. It's his family on this like great advertisement for Vale or Aspen. I can't remember the two. And when my mom and I both walked by, we kind of went, oh my God, look who that is. So again, the magic of just going again, trying to find my sister a lamp at antique stores. So that was something really fun. So that is kind of how I try to do it. Yes, Nathania words it very well. The glitter, the glimmer, or the ta-da, or something fun. I also recommend the 5 days to schedule every month. I use those also as kind of a weekly theme, but I think it's always a good thing to include those in your self-care because I think those are the things that, again, it's a fun challenge to incorporate. And just because we have 5 things listed does not mean we have to have 5 things. Maybe again, you've got your dedicated three. And then I do like my iconography, but I also love these ideas of these kind of simple things to add to your routine. So the Silk and Sonder 31 Days of Velocity is the one on the right. And then the Anti-Perfection Challenge from Ambitiously Alexis on the left. She has had some great themes as well that I feel like go very much hand in hand with the Silk and Sonder mantra. But I think that's another kind of fun way of approaching a to-do or kind of adding a something special. So the fact that like daydream without feeling guilty. We have so many of those abilities to do those. So I think they're just really nice ways to incorporate something a little fun, a little special into your day. Same thing with some of those bucket list items, as well as soon it will be time. So as we release the bats. And all of those kind of fun things. So I'm gonna go back, play another song, and we'll see you soon. And then I just did want to acknowledge in the chat the no social media thing, and I'm a big advocate for what works for you. I definitely took the time to kind of curate my social media in that same capacity, and so now I get these kind of really fun things. And then I jokingly we bring a lot of that fun social media to each of you because I know I use these bucket lists. Maya does as well, and I know Jeno has pulled some stuff in there. So we're always looking for those little tricks. So it's like you don't have to, fear you're missing out because I feel like we hit some of the really fun high stuff as well without having to weed through all of the noise, it seems. So now we're going to move into the second page, which I lovingly refer to it as the B side. And even Jen and I were talking about this earlier about how I feel like even I've not neglected the B side a little bit to the point I was like, what if I just flipped the entire pages around and started with the B side one of these days? So maybe if I at least get another like second to that, I'll probably do that for my next social just to like shake things up a little bit. But the meal plan and a lot of these things is they're a great template, but sometimes we just see a lot of repurposing for these. So you can use the meal plan exactly as written. Whereas something you plan for, or it can be something that you track in real time, especially if you're on a specific healthcare journey, a symptom journey. As someone, I suffer from ulcerative colitis. There are times where I try to figure out if I'm in a superficial flare or if it's just something that I've eaten, something that I've drank, if I've made some adjustments. So I will certainly track that, especially as I get closer to procedures or blood work or medication that I have to do to support that, just to really see that I am doing the best decisions for the best time because I've learned to kind of treat some of those things a little bit where it's going to be a problem, but not a big problem. But maybe it's leaning into the one good thing, the glimmers. Maybe this is you almost kind of use this a little bit as your kind of meeting schedule or a weekly schedule, appointment listings, because you want to save those weekly spread pages for your daily ritual responses, your daily reflections, some of more of that like kind of self-care, dig in a little bit. Because I know that those pages are great for that. And I always hate to use that section kind of just for like, hey, I have this one random appointment for the day. And then it's like, oh, now I've run out of space. Um, you can use it again, leaning into some of those doodles. I love the doodles. We'll probably swap out the doodles next year around, but me leaning a little bit more into the meal plan for the soul. So this is maybe where some of the reflections are, your daily rituals, daily affirmations, or even something again, the lighter side, something creative, as a way to kind of express yourself in that kind of capacity. You can certainly use it for that. I've also used it as a clothing and a wardrobe tracker, especially when I was traveling for work, especially when you need to kind of keep it into like a smaller suitcase. I tend to overpack on shoes, and I have now been thrilled to pieces that I'm able to do it with that capacity. So I think it's great for that. Same thing if you work from home, just to make sure that people are aware that you're maybe doing laundry behind the scenes, not showing up into the same outfits every time. That's something that I get paranoid about, to the point it's like, I hope this client hasn't seen me in literally the same sweatshirt. Um, the idea of the mind body health plan, another something that you can either plan for or it's something that you can track in real time. You can certainly do it leaning into those alliterations, the days of, which I think are great, the national days of. Maybe this is more of kind of the better place to put like your big meals. Everyone's on their own for breakfast and lunch, but you can do the dinners here. Nathania's in the chat, so I always like to shout out the elegant simplicity of I feel and I need. I think it's an extremely valuable just mental check-in. You can do it at the beginning of the day, end of the day. I was doing it throughout the day when I find myself getting a little anxious, a little agitated, a little short, because it was always surprising. And I know it was one of those results of realizing, like, oh no, I'm not having a serious issue. I'm just sitting up next to a boiler, so I'm overheating. So I just need to go downstairs and cool off a little bit. And it's amazing what that does for your day. Maybe this is where some of those bucket list items are going to be reading logs, home decluttering, home cleaning, the 7 types of rest. And again, I like this idea of 6 truths you need on your hardest days because I feel like we've had rough days, we've had rough weeks. I've had a rough week. And then I just thought these were pretty of like some things that you can do for yourself, the buy fresh flowers, go on a color walk, which is again that kind of tapping into being present, kind of noticing all those things, but also becomes a little bit of a grounding ritual. And then who doesn't love fun post-it notes? especially when you like forget that you've put them somewhere. I always think it's great. And I know Jeno has had some great socials in the past where she's talked about the mirror exercise. So I think all of those can be really well done. The shopping list. So as I said, I repurposed my shopping list this past week for my mind map question, but this is where some of those bingos can be. I saw someone had a birthday, so we love to maybe do a birthday bingo. Maybe it was back to school bingo and into summer bingo, a start to fall bingo. The just for fun, or even just the buy, don't buy, kind of put it in there, mini breaks, the to be, the glimmers, kind of some of those definitions of maybe it's a self-care bingo. Maybe this is where the stickers all go and hang out and love because no longer being sticker hoarders, they want to be stuck and fulfill their sticker destiny, as Maya says. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of these. We would love to hear how you repurpose these, or you like, I absolutely use it in this capacity. And as we move into the bird months, it's never too early to start planning. I have an amazing visual which does the countdowns for all of the dates at the end of the year. So we'll see. thank you everybody for sharing your wonderful tips and tricks and certainly how you approach these pages, because I do feel like we can kind of talk almost in this kind of like eloquent, very polished version of it. And we see all these lovely examples, but the chat is where it's like, this is how it's actually practically used. And I feel like, again, it's that real world keeping in. And I feel like it just makes me feel a little bit better when it's like, oh yeah, no, definitely didn't do that. Same thing. So with the very last section on that page is the I am loving. Again, not to scare you, but there's. So I love that idea of how many days until autumn, and then the Halloween, and then the bonfire night, which is a UK holiday, which involved fireworks and bonfires. And the English are such pyromaniacs. And then obviously Christmas. But love the idea of certainly embracing a mashed potato fall or a pumpkin fall or the apple fall. I'm all about the mashed potatoes. But it is that opportunity to kind of shout what you are loving. And again, using that maybe as the summary of the week or just something that's making you smile. So if you'd like to share in the chat, we always like to see what you are currently loving there. And as always, oh, can you believe it? We have reached the end. So we would love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app. Obviously, you all provide such amazing examples that really bring these socials to life. And so that's why we love to see those there. And it's also definitely inspiration for everyone, wallflowers, extroverts, introverts, anyone and everyone that uses the Sonder journals. We love to see that there. I know that I think it was, Janine did a lovely shout out to our personalized coach, Jenny, if you hear her. We love the feedback for that. Just seeing the evolution of Jenny has been amazing. And I know Mayha and the team have such great ideas for her in the coming future. So we'd love to see that. If you want to try that out, you always have that options. The YouTube link is there in case you have missed a little bit or want to go back and recapture it. Or as I always say, we have 3 different facilitators that hosted a weekly setup this weekend. So it's always great to include all of those perspectives. This is a copy of my playlist. It was very much fiddle and violin heavy, which I love. It makes me smile. And I include all of my Silk and Sonder social playlists on my Spotify account if you want to be there. But as always, we are so glad that you spent this hour with us on a Sunday. No Sunday scaries. I know that we are going to have an amazing rest of the day. We're going to have an amazing rest of our week as we continue to embrace velocity. One more week in August as we start moving again into those Burr months, closing out another quarter. But we hope to see you at a future event real soon. Bye.
You must know someone like him. He was tall, strong and lean, with a body like a greyhound and a mind so sharp and keen. But his heart's just like a lotto, grew twisted around itself, till almost everything he did caused pain to someone else. It's not just what you're born with, it's what you choose to bear. It's not how big your share is, but how much you can share. And it's not the fights you dreamed of, but those you really fought. It's not what you've been given, it's what you do with what you've got.